Hey everybody, what is happening? It is Brent Axe, and we are live here on the Syracuse Orange Facebook page for football as game one is in the books, and not a good one for Syracuse football. It was actually looking pretty promising for a while. It was actually looking like Syracuse was going to make a game of this. Certainly was looking like Syracuse was going to cover that 22 and a half point spread for a while, but alas, Syracuse falls to 0-1 on the 2020 season and comes out of the gate with an offensive dud against the North Carolina Tar Heels. The final score 31-6 in Chapel Hill. My name is Brent Axe. We are back here on Facebook Live thanks to our friends at Kraus Health. And we're going to be here all season long after every Syracuse football game. So kind of keep it in mind to come on by here after every Syracuse football game throughout the season. We will be here chatting live with you. We do put this up on YouTube as well in my recap on syracuse.com. So if you miss it live, you can always watch the replay of that. The comment section is open for you to rant about this one. I'll respond to you guys a little bit as we go, but feel free to talk amongst yourselves. Keep it civil in there, please, of course. But one way or the other, what you're really going to think about when it comes to this game are blown opportunities. It's not like Syracuse didn't have their chances in this football game. They lost 31-6. So if you just kind of dropped it and didn't watch the game, you're like, well, the defense didn't play well. That wasn't the case at all. This defense played as well as they could under the circumstances. This offense just could not do a thing, even with the opportunities presented to it. Dropping balls in the end zone. There was a touchdown called back due to a penalty on a punt return, a really unnecessary penalty. Look, in the first game of the season, players are going to make mistakes. They're going to make dumb blocks. They're going to make penalties, particularly in an offseason where Syracuse had less practice time than I can remember a team ever having, frankly, because of course, COVID-19 shutting down spring practice. So you had to expect some sloppy play. You had to expect some mistakes in this game. But that penalty, that block penalty on the punt return, you got to let your punt returner beat the punter on the other team from Carolina trying to tackle you. It was just an unnecessary block. Boom, that's a touchdown off the board. Johnson had a pass. Now, at first look, it looked like Tommy DeVito overthrew him. And I said that on Twitter. I'm like, God, DeVito overthrew him. But then when you go back and you look at the replay, the ball was in Johnson's hands. Like a Division One ACC receiver has got to make that catch. They're not all going to be right in the breadbasket. So there's a missed opportunity there. Syracuse with red zone chances they let slip. Andre Schmidt, the Lou Groza Award winner, by many definitions, one of the best kickers in the country, missed a chip shot inside the, well, I think it was like a 20-yard kick that he missed, right? So opportunities abound for Syracuse. They had their chances in this game. And look, yeah, it's only game one, but this is a weird season. They're scheduled to play 11 games. Who knows what's going to happen as the season progresses? Just today, we learned that Virginia Tech has been rescheduled for, I believe, the 19th, or I think even a week beyond that, because COVID shut down that game. Virginia Tech had a COVID situation. They didn't feel comfortable playing, so that game got postponed. Who knows as Syracuse goes down the road here if they're going to have players test positive, if opponents are going to have players test positive to the point where they don't reach the threshold and they're going to have to either postpone or cancel games. So you got to take advantage of the opportunities where they come. And in this new schedule that Syracuse was handed a month ago, in just a season of complete adjustments had to be made, it got tougher. There's no question it got tougher. They didn't have North Carolina on their initial schedule here in 2020. North Carolina, top 25 team, added to the slate. Syracuse didn't have Notre Dame initially on its schedule. That's added to the slate. Syracuse, by certainly on paper, has one of the toughest road schedules in the country. But those start to pile up as excuses. When you get into a game like this and your defense, North Carolina had an impressive opening drive, but the defense time after time was getting Sam Howell and that offense off the field. They were handing chance after chance after chance to the Syracuse offense, which was stale. It was predictable. It was not a good debut for new Syracuse offensive coordinator Sterling Gilbert. And look, this is what Syracuse football is supposed to be, right? Orange is the new fast. Dino Babers is supposed to be an offensive coach. We all know the problems that Syracuse had on its offensive line a year ago. Here we are in game one. Those offensive line problems certainly were not fixed as we hop into the live stats here just to kind of see numbers wise what happened in this one. So let's go through it here. But the big number was an offensive line that gave up 43 sacks to Tommy DeVito last year, 50 sacks overall, gives up 7 in game one. And I'll tell you what, you got Pittsburgh coming in next week, or Syracuse going to Pittsburgh, pardon me, next week. That's top to bottom one of the best defenses in the ACC and frankly in the country. They had 3 players that could have gone to the National Football League draft, including safety Paris Ford, who was named to the first team All-ACC team, over Andre Cisco, who had an interception today, his 13th career interception, played great. I think Ife Melanfonlu played great. I think freshman Garrett Williams played great in his first game. I think, again, the defense did its job. They just were gassed. They were on the field too much, and North Carolina was just going to take advantage of that. So no matter who made first team All ACC, Andre Cisco was first team All AP over Paris Ford. Bottom line is Pittsburgh's got its best defense I've seen in years. Pittsburgh's got the most talent under Pat Narduzzi. Kenny Pickett, who seemingly has been quarterback at Pittsburgh since like 1985, is there. That's a tough team. So if Syracuse was going to be on a path to improve on last year, these are the games you got to win because you had to sneak one of these 2 on the road, right? So now you're putting yourself in a real tough position to win a game next week on the road at Pittsburgh. When you have an opportunity like they did today to grab a road win over a team, North Carolina might end up being pretty darn good. It might compete for the ACC championship, but in game one, you got to take advantage of those opportunities, and Syracuse didn't. So here's what it looked like statistically. North Carolina had 463 yards to Syracuse's 202. For the Orange, 134 of those yards were through the air, just 68 on the ground. And of that, Tommy DeVito had 30 of 68 yards rushing. Now, it's fair to note that Abdul Adams and Jarvion Howard, who were supposed to be Syracuse's starting 2 running backs, opted out. They are allegedly pursuing an NFL career, which to me, frankly, is laughable. I mean, no offense to those kids, they're not NFL level talents. So if they think they're just going to waltz into the NFL draft next year, that's not feasible. If they opted out for COVID reasons, I respect that and understand the hard choice that players had. But it left the Syracuse running game in a position where now it's a weakness as opposed to a strength. So Jawar Jordan, the freshman, had to step in, and Jordan had 14 carries for 26 yards today. His longest was a 6-yard run. Markenzie Pierre, who we've seen flashes of, he steps in 5 carries for 12 yards today. So Syracuse had no push from the offensive line. They had no running game. And look, on that offensive line, you got Chris Elmore, who had to step in at left guard today. Rhino, the do-it-all player for Syracuse, who's played multiple positions. So they got a hole at left guard. They've got an offensive line that's got some veterans back in Aaron Service and Carlos Vettorello, who went through the fires last year and actually played pretty well down the stretch, as Matthew Bergeron did at right tackle. Syracuse got dealt a huge blow this week when Chris Blake, their transfer offensive guard from Florida, the NCAA in all its infinite wisdom for some reason did not grant him an immediate waiver when it seems like they've been handing those out like candy. Just ridiculous that they denied Chris Blake the opportunity to play here. Now, he wouldn't have played today anyway because he's a little banged up, and I don't think would have been on the field even if he got the waiver from the NCAA. But bottom line is this Syracuse offensive line through game one has its issues. I'll tell you what, somebody tweeted this. It's probably going to be the tweet of the game in my recap, and I hope you can read that recap tomorrow morning on syracuse.com. 2020, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it was basically like 2020 is so different than 2019, but the only thing that remains the same is Syracuse football. And today that was unfortunately the truth. So just to go through some other stats here, Carolina had 303 passing yards through the air, 134 for Syracuse. Rex Culpepper actually came in for Tommy DeVito. DeVito was 13 of 31 for 112 yards. And while it wasn't completely DeVito's fault, there's a lot you certainly can't put on DeVito. Holds onto the ball too long. He's struggling past his first read. It kind of goes to that first read, and then you could tell that Sterling Gilbert, the new offensive coordinator for the Orange, has told him to take off and run quicker. It's just a lot of the same issues we saw last year. Third down, rolling to the sideline, throwing the ball away, nobody open. It's deja vu for this offense, and I didn't expect everything to just click in game one, but again, the opportunities were there. This is not a case where the Carolina defense just put their foot on Syracuse's throat. You can't drop balls in the end zone. You can't have unimaginative play calling in the red zone. Syracuse was 110th in the country last year in red zone percentage. And to look at this stat sheet on the receiving end, Taj Harris was the lone bright spot, the only bright spot on offense for the Orange today. 5 catches, 64 yards. That's it. Anthony Quealy made a couple of catches late in the game when Rex Culpepper was in, but for the most part, this was a pedestrian, just boring offense today. And to see, or honestly not to see, Aaron Hackett or Luke Benson in the stats, that's a joke. Those guys combined for 9 touchdowns last year. They're red zone threats. These are players that can help you move the chains, get your offense in rhythm, get your quarterback comfortable. How do they not have a catch in this football game? That's a big mistake. That is a huge blunder on Dino Babers and Sterling Gilbert's part, and I hope that's something that they fix going forward, because those two, deserve to be a part of the offense, and they help the offense when they're a part of it. Like I said, 9 touchdowns last year. That's not a fluke. So looking at some other things, both teams struggled with penalties. Syracuse had 8 penalties for 60 yards. North Carolina had 9 penalties for 91 yards on the day. On third down, Syracuse was terrible, 4 of 19. North Carolina was 5 of 13 there. So all told, Syracuse ran 73 plays on the day for 202 yards. North Carolina ran 3 less plays, 70, and had 463 yards on the day. But again, that's not on the defense. The defense was just gassed. They made play after play, got North Carolina off the field, kept handing Syracuse that chance, but Charlie Brown kept missing that football, thinking Lucy was going to hold it down every time. That offense just terrible out there today. There's really no other way to put it. They were just inefficient. They were unimaginative. And even for game one, if anything in game one, throw what you got at that team. They don't know what to expect. But those first down runs were predictable. Again, not using the tight ends. But even when the chances were there, if that punt return for a touchdown counted, if Johnson's touchdown had counted, maybe you get some momentum and you just kind of hold off North Carolina. And for entertainment purposes only, I thought that was a big play. I thought that was a great play. 22 and a half. And for most of this game, it was looking like the right play. Maybe thinking Syracuse would lose, but a ton of points to cover, but they didn't even get the backdoor cover on that one. So not only does North Carolina win, if you bet on North Carolina minus 22 and a half, you got a victory of sorts there. So we mentioned the numbers on the Syracuse side individually. North Carolina's terrific quarterback, Sam Howell, 25 of 34, 295 yards. He had a touchdown and a couple of interceptions. Andre Sisco with a pick. There was a tip pick that Michael Jones got, and Jones had a great play there, but unfortunately had a penalty, which I'm frankly surprised he was not called for targeting. It was textbook targeting. Howell slid. He was what's the term I'm looking for? He was defenseless, and Jones just popped him with his helmet. I thought that was an easy call, but he got away with that. A mistake that can't happen there. But for the most part, Tony White and his defense were impressive. I like what they're doing with the 3-3-5. It's a pretty darn good offense they were facing. And mind you, it's the first game of the year, as we mentioned, with the lack of practice time and everything through the offseason. But, maybe things are looking up on the defensive side of the ball for the Orange, which clearly was a major issue last year. 3 games of 50-plus points or more for opponents. Brian Ward, the defensive coordinator, was fired during the season. So we'll see. It's only game 1. But, again, just a blown opportunity for Syracuse today. That's really the story of this thing. And I'm seeing some questions here, including Kyle, who says, well, how do you fix the offense? Look, that's the question. How do you fix this offense when you've got an offensive line that's continuing to struggle? You're down 2 talented running backs. Tommy DeVito having the struggles he is. Again, Taj Harris got open. Quealy got open. I didn't see Ed Hendricks out there today. If he did, correct me if I'm wrong, but he didn't do much even if he was. How do you fix this offense is the question. And it's a great one. You start by getting back to basics, using the tight ends, getting back to pace, but they have no running game. So I think teams are sniffing that out, and they're being able to sit back and make Tommy DeVito make decisions. And clearly the decision that Tommy DeVito was making was, oh, I'm going to roll over the sideline here and hope something happens. He's going east-west. You want your quarterback going this way. You don't want your quarterback going east-west, right? Blake saying that DeVito goes down too easy, wondering if he has the respect of his teammates. He doesn't have the leadership skills that Dungy brought to the team. Look, they're different quarterbacks. But I would like to see Tommy DeVito have a little bit more Dungy in him. I know that Sterling Gilbert's got it in the playbook to have DeVito go with some design runs. Most of the runs DeVito had today were breakdowns, but there were a few design runs. And if you remember the Western Michigan game last year, DeVito showed he can run the football. He's got jets. He's actually faster than Eric Dungy. But I don't know if I think they certainly respect him. They worked out with him all offseason. He's their quarterback. He's their leader. But what we're starting to see, and we didn't see last year, is DeVito just doesn't inspire. He just doesn't make that extra play, doesn't, look, Dungy paid for it in that he missed a lot of time. He missed the equivalent of an entire season due to injury. But people respected that he would just kind of put his head down and go for it, whereas the enduring image you see of DeVito right now, and maybe he can fix this, but the image you see is a guy who rolls to the sideline and throws the ball away or goes out of bounds. Tommy DeVito has talent. There's no question about it, but he's got to step up. And when Rex Culpepper's your backup and your other backups are freshmen, Dylan Markowitz, the kid they got from Texas who just arrived in August and is way behind on the playbook, you got a couple other freshmen. There's no viable backup on this team. And, honestly, I thought that was the case last year with Clayton Welch. Welch stepped in, made some plays, helped Syracuse not only win some games, but just kind of held down the fort when DeVito was gone. Well, difference was Welch is a senior. And everybody else on this roster outside of Rex Culpepper is a senior. And I just don't think Rex is as talented as Tommy DeVito. But, if that offense keeps going south, then, nothing's off the table, I would say. Peter's saying the offense struggled offensively with a piecemeal offensive line. They lost Blake, which hurt as well. That really hurt. And shame on the NCAA. That's a joke. They were handing out transfer waiver approvals across the board to people. That Chris Blake transferred to Syracuse. He announced his intention to do so in December, arrived here, I believe in January, or was it April? But no matter what the time frame is, the NCAA had plenty of time to make this decision. Took until 2 days before the season and denied him his waiver. Now, no two cases are the same. He had an injury situation, but the fact that I didn't really see a lot of denials out there. The fact that they gave him one is just an utter joke, and it just proves what a joke the NCAA is at this point. Kevin's saying by the time DeVito decides to run, he's already on the ground, buried under five defenders. At this point, Brian saying, I don't think we'll have to worry about losing Dino to another school. Yeah, I remember that. Danny DeVito has more scrambling ability. Somebody put that in my inbox during the game, that Danny DeVito, I think he said Danny DeVito stinks. Look. How dare you, sir? Throw Mama from the Train was a theatrical classic, okay? It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, terrific show, right? Twins, great movie. Batman Returns. Danny DeVito as the Penguin. Don't you be knocking on Danny DeVito now. I understand what the joke was, but come on, let's not bring Danny DeVito into this. The American treasure that he is, right? Oh, you gotta love it. So it's just, and you guys are kind of saying some of the things about DeVito, third down. Kevin noting that I was saying that people were jumping on DeVito after one bad half to change quarterbacks. If there was a quarterback to go to, I think that'd be more of a conversation. This is not Dungy DeVito here. I love Rex Culpepper. I love his story. That kid, recovered from cancer. It's amazing to see Rex Culpepper. He comes in and he's just got lettuce, just hair flowing out of his helmet, which is great to see because when he was going through his cancer treatment, typically, unfortunately, a lot of cancer patients, of course, lose their hair. And you just saw Rex Culpepper in these buzz cuts, and now he's out there with his hair flowing. He looks good. He looks healthy, but he's just not as good as Tommy DeVito. He's just not. He's got a lot of limitations at the quarterback position. I love the kid's story. I just don't think he can be a starting quarterback at this level. So if this was a DeVito Dungy type of thing where there was a backup that was right nipping at your heels, and think about this, where Tommy DeVito really came on the scene. We all knew he was a four-star prospect and hyped up and everything, but when he really came on the scene, it was when he beat North Carolina. Comes off the bench for Dungy, had 181 yards in like 5 minutes in the end of that game, goes into overtime, throws 3 touchdowns from the time he came into the game, including the game winner in overtime, and that's when he arrived. That was his moment. That's when people looked at that situation and said, hey, what are we doing here? Get DeVito in there for Dungy, which was a little premature. I admit I was one of those people that said that, but Eric Dungy proved We were all wrong about that. So for DeVito to go from that to where we are now, and again, it's not all on him, but at some point, you've been around long enough. You know what you have in the offensive line. You got to start making plays. You got to start being the guy. You got to start extending plays. And I think fans are just getting tired of this. Yeah, roll to the sideline, throw the ball away, unimaginative offense at this point, which should not be what we're discussing when that's what Dino Babers' reputation is. Sterling Gilbert is a coach that had worked with Dino before. They helped Jimmy Garoppolo win the Walter Payton Award as one of the, which is the equivalent of the Heisman Trophy at the FCS level. Like there's an acumen there. There's a resume there. This come out of nowhere. So again, that's not panicking after one game. This is a continuation of last year and the same issues we saw last year. Yet there were moments, there were flashes, there were chances in this game that this team just could not convert on. So disappointing to say the least. And when you go through a season, when you've got North Carolina on the road, you got Pittsburgh on the road next week, you go to Clemson, you have Louisville now on the road. Louisville was supposed to come to the Carrier Dome. I believe that game was originally scheduled for Halloween, if I'm not mistaken. They moved that game to Louisville. That's not an easy place to go. That's a team that can score in bunches. And then you got to go to South Bend at the end of the year. And look, that was one thing today. I guess I'm getting used to it. It's still strange to me to see empty stadiums, but I think that the television broadcasts do a great job kind of filling in the gaps, putting in ambient noise. Some television networks, I know they're doing this on the radio side too. They kind of pump in noise. It kind of gives you that ambient background that you need. So I've gotten used to that. I don't know how the players are getting used to it, but that's certainly not a factor. To go on the road in a quiet, empty, sterile environment and play like, you had 50,000 fans down your throat the whole game. Again, you can't, this is football. There's only 11 games this year, usually 12. You can't throw away opportunities like this, particularly with how tough your road slate is, and it puts more pressure on Syracuse now to just kind of sweep all their home games, to sweep across the board. You got to beat Georgia Tech at home. You got to beat Boston College at home. You got to beat those teams that on Duke, frankly, that look beatable. But if this offense can't improve in a hurry, who would you put in the beatable category if you're Syracuse at this point? So I'll tell you what, I think we're going to end there for this version of Facebook Live presented by Krause Health after a season-opening 31-6 loss for the Orange against North Carolina. I hope you can check out all of our coverage. Our guy Nate Mink was one of the few reporters actually at this game, so he'll have lots of coverage for you coming. My recap will be up on syracuse.com tomorrow morning, and all the usual coverage you can expect from our terrific team covering Syracuse football. Again, I'll be here after every game, so make an appointment to come on by, chat with us on Facebook Live. Usually we come off of Dino Babers' press conference, but, given the limitations of COVID and how things are going this year, I don't believe we're going to be running those live as much as usual with Zoom calls and everything happening there. So, when the game's over, just kind of hang on Facebook. You'll see the notification pop up, and we'll be here. But if you do miss it, we put it on YouTube, and you'll see that on my recap on syracuse.com and on our Syracuse Orange Sports YouTube page as well. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend. We'll meet again next week, another noon kickoff. So as soon as that one's over, come on by here to Facebook Live. We'll chat about Syracuse and Pittsburgh. Have a good one, everybody.